Okay. We're rolling then. Okay, good afternoon. My name's Jeff Newell, and I am the regional manager for Dixon Valve and Couplings. And today I've been asked to come in and talk to you guys about Dixon Quick Couplings, which is one of our divisions located down in Charlotte, North Carolina, that make, as the name implies, quick couplings for hose fittings. So, you guys have bought some quick couplings from us currently, not a whole lot. It's not a very strong line for you, but hopefully by the time we get a little education today, we'll all be mass wizards at selling these things. So, a quick coupling. Basically, it's a mechanical device that connects or disconnects a hose to a power source while maintaining system integrity. You know, if you have a bobcat or something like that, and you want to change from the forks to a wire brush wheel or some sort of attachment, you disconnect the hoses and then recouple them by using quick couplings. There are a couple of different styles. You have a single shutoff, which has the coupler side will disconnect, and it's open on this side. If you think about these, they're used for pneumatics primarily. Has anybody ever seen an air hose like going wild, flying all over the place? That's because it doesn't have any restriction in the end of it. So if we disconnected and we didn't have a shutoff on one side, that thing would be flying all over the place. You'd have your air tool in the other. When you disconnect those, like a wrench or whatever, this would be threaded into that tool. And let's take a nail gun, for instance. When you disconnect it, you hear that psst. That's the air discharging out of the tool. If we had shutoffs on both sides, then the air would be trapped in there. And I was kidding around with Doug and just shot him with a nail. Oh, sorry, Doug. So we want that air to dissipate out and de-energize the tool. If air spills all over the ground, it's very easy to clean up. So, double shutoff valves would be used for the hydraulics. So it cuts off on both sides. Again, if you're disconnecting a hydraulic tool, you don't want the oil to discharge on either side, because then that is a little bit more of a pain to clean up. So, so hydraulics use shutoffs on both sides. And then there is a straight through coupling, primarily doesn't have shutoff on either side. Primarily you find that on pressure washer wands. You know, like the little nipples on the end, you can change it from a stream to a fan to a whatever, you can change that cone out. So it's is where you find those most of the time. So those are the three different styles: single, double shutoff, and straight throughs. One of the big issues that we have with primarily hydraulic lines, is the flow. So as you have oil going through a coupler, if it runs into something like this, it's going to basically hit that flat plate and then have to rush through these small holes to flow through the coupler. It creates some turbulence. Turbulence generally creates heat, and heat is bad. As you can see, this is a much more open style, but still has some areas of reflection, flat surfaces for it to hit and cause turbulence. But then again, if you go to the smooth flowing transition of this, which is our door system, a dual opposing retention spheres, I think, something like that. It means we got two balls on both sides and then the stem in the center, so that everything's round, so it allows the stuff to flow a whole lot better. And then by design, we'll show you in a minute, it prevents that thing from shooting out in case there's a failure. So Dixon quick coupling makes a lot of different quick disconnects. This, is our catalog full of quick disconnects for air as well as pneumatic. And what I want to talk to you guys about is what we affectionately call the Fabulous 5. These are the most popular brands, or styles rather, that are found out in the industry. So 80% of our sales are found in the DF series, the H, K, W, and HT series. So we'll just kind of look at those. If you're just getting into this, that's really the place to start with these 5 because they're the most common movers. So looking at the DF series, we have basically it's a general purpose pneumatic service.
We do stock some of those. I don't know if these guys know that. We do stock some of the DF series.
Perfect. That's what this little guy is here. It's a pneumatic, so it's for air tools, and it kind of has a reverse sleeve on it. So by the nature of design, when this gets disconnected, if this is, you know, on your tool, you come up, there's a hose coming off of the back here. You grab the hose and you pull this sleeve towards you, and just sort of by the nature of this, of the way it's set up, you are keeping your hand on the hose, so it prevents it from flying out and smacking poor Doug. It's really nothing personal, Doug. It's just you happen to be right there. So to connect it, you just push it in and it locks it into place. So it's a little easier. It's what we call an automatic lock. So pull it to you to disconnect it, which is, and then push it in to connect it. Pretty simple. And because it's for air, it's valved on one side, straight through on the other. And I had to, that's kind of the opposite of what most folks do. Like I had to drive an hour and a half one way once because somebody bought a whole bunch of them. They're like, it's not connecting, it's not connecting. Are you sure you're pushing it all the way through? People are used to holding the sleeve back and pushing it in. Like this one, to connect it, you have to pull the sleeve back, push the coupler up, and then connect it like that. So they were pulling that sleeve back, and they're like, it won't stay in there. So an hour and a half later, I went up and went, click up, go.
Oh,
okay. So, thank you. So takes a little bit of an explanation, but it works great. And especially if you're in a place where it's either tight, hard to get into, if it's in a manifold or something like that, you can just push it in and pull it in. You don't have to try and get both hands to pull back this way, push in that way. It's a little more user-friendly. So, a couple of different sizes, configurations of materials, and of course the end part. It has a reverse acting sleeve for safe one-handed operation. Where you would find these, again, is in construction air tools, breathing air, paint spray systems, and industrial or plant air tools. So if you are looking at, that's the industrial style, if you recall, that's the industrial style profile. If you had, there's a couple of different styles. There's an industrial, there's an Aero, there's a Lincoln long nose, and there is automotive style. So there's 4 different styles that everybody kind of copies. Doesn't matter who the manufacturer is. But if you wanted to keep things separate, like for instance, let's take this paint spray system. So we got a body shop, and you know, in our air system we have our FRLs, or our filter, regulator, and lubricator, so that we can protect all of our air tools, right? We want to clean the air up and filter it and regulate it so it runs at the proper speed, and then lubricate the tool. But we're a small shop, we've only got one sort of compressor, so we use that same thing for paint spraying too. But we don't want to put oil in our paint. That's kind of make quite a mess of our paint job. So we could use maybe, for instance, this on our paint sprayers, because it's not going to interchange with that one. So if someone can't inadvertently hook up to a wet line, they can have it filtered and regulated, but then it splits off and it goes to this style, and then the regular tools would get filtered, regulated, and lubricated. So you can keep your one line's wet, one line's dry, and make sure that the tool that's supposed to hook to that goes the way it. So these are everywhere. Any place that they're using air, 80% of what you're going to find is that style interchange. So when in doubt, try the industrial. 8 out of 10 customers, you're gonna hit the nail on the head. We do actually make a universal, which takes 6 different configurations. So if you're really into jam, including the Lincoln long nose, because everything's got to have one exception to every rule, right? So it'll even take this one. That's called the UDC series, the Universal Disconnect.
I found out the hard way that some are longer than others. Went and bought a pack of them and tried to stick them in, and
Because Lincoln was the original manufacturer,
Okay.
and it's got a long nose. So that's kind of just the,
broke it.
most people just call it the Lincoln style. The Lincoln long nose helps us
Gotcha.
who are less than, smart, remember
That would be
things.
Okay.
Simple things for simple minds, right?
Because President Lincoln had a very long nose.
Right.
I didn't think he came into play in this.
Okay, Doug,
He was
figure it out.
president of
Remember that in history?
Yeah, you don't remember
Yeah,
that?
he
He was-
invented the quick disconnect for air systems.
No, I missed that part.
Yeah, he was pretty famous for that. Okay, any questions as far as that goes? Make sense? Okay, great. So, moving over to the hydraulic world of our fabulous 5, we have what's called the ISO-B, or it's our H series. It interchanges with Parker's 60 series, Hanson's HK, Faster's, Aeroquip's FD45, Snap-Tite's 72 series. So they all make the same configuration. Interchangeability isn't an issue with ours versus them. I have one of those right here. And as you can see, it's just a simple hydraulic coupling. It's valved on both sides, so we don't spill oil when we disconnect. Hand that around. Uses general industrial hydraulics, chemical processing tank and trailer, truck and trailer rather, excuse me, and food processing. Food processing? Why yes, food processing. Mobile fryer units. So like on the deep fryers, a lot of times they'll have this style quick disconnect on them. We can actually use them for the hydraulic power units, but carpet and upholstery cleaning. There's a lot of different applications where the HB series comes into play. Or the H series ISO B, excuse me. ISO B, we also have our ISO A, or which is our K series, which again, same idea, it's just a little more robust. It almost looks the same. General purpose hydraulic applications, common on snowplow, agricultural, and mobile transport. So because it's got a little extra meat in the design, it resists cracking during installation. They've got a heavier duty hex on it. If you think about a snowplow application, which is something that's pretty prevalent around here, you know, snowplows are pretty aggressive. They're going along at 45 miles an hour and hit a manhole and jar, and so there's a lot of issues with that. So we recommend the ISO A or our Dixon K series for these. They can also be, again, used in truck trailer applications, as well as a lot of agricultural applications, and of course mining, which we have very little of around here. Our W series, or our wing nut series. This is what it used to look like. This is what it now looks like. Little different sizes, as you can tell. But we've changed the design on these. So it used to have just 2 hex wrenches, or I'm sorry, it had 2 wrench flats. It now has hex on both sides, so it makes it a whole lot easier to install. A lot of people are like, wow, that makes so much sense, it's so much easier, including us. Why didn't we think of that years ago? So it's a smaller design than it was. One of the problems with any quick disconnect is either that it swivels, which this isn't any big deal because it's going to tighten up, but on those, if they're spinning, they're going to end up tearing up the coupler. On that style, whether it's the air or hydraulic, or side load is a big thing. So if there's a lot of weight hanging off of this, then that kind of cockeyes the angle in there.
Easy, Chris, easy.
Please put on safety glasses for the remainder of the presentation.
Steel toes.
Yeah, it's steel toes.
Pop goes the whistle.
So, are you okay? Before we make fun of you, are you okay? Okay, good.
That one's got some kick.
Just a little bit.
All right. So this has got a shorter profile, or a shorter overall length than it did to help ease the side load. But most importantly,
Just on a note, don't let her have that one.
it's kind of heavy, I know. The biggest difference
You guys are so cruel to me.
is the valve
I'm
body.
done with that one.
You broke it.
No.
She puts it back up then.
Whoa. Now you got me with
back together.
dropsies.
No.
So this is the valve body on the inside that everybody uses. You can see the oil has to come down, hit this, make a 90-degree turn, hit the wall of the coupler, make another 90-degree turn to flow through. So it's got a lot of 90-degree turns to make. This is our new body. Ooh, this is pretty, that's sexy. So you can see the difference. Depending on the size, it can get up to as much as 30% more flow. So I'll hand that around.
Just
You can take this too if you like. So the idea behind this is that it creates less turbulence, it flows through a lot smoother, which allows oil to flow through faster. So where you might find these is on a dump trailer. That's where these are pretty popular. Or if you've ever seen, like, a lot of the mulch manufacturers have those walking floor trailers that have hydraulic floor, so instead of getting in there with a pitchfork and shoveling an entire tractor trailer load of mulch, you just sort of, the floor walks and it brings the stuff out to you, or stone, whatever. So that's where they use a lot of these style fittings. And by getting better flow might mean that you get an extra load, you know, a day, depending on how far you're running or whatever. You're going to be able to lift faster, close faster, so you might be able to sneak an extra load in. And if most of these drivers are paid by the load, so if they can make one extra run a day, that'll easily offset the price of that fitting. And actually, we introduced this coupling. It's been it's been shipping now. We kind of did a rolling change, so as we ran out, we just filled this in. There was no price increase, so you're getting a better coupling for the same money as before. They're also used on portable pumps, like a company like Godwin Pumps, you know, has these hydraulic submersible pumps to help pump out whatever needs to be pumped out, and they use this style of a fitting for it. Okay, our HT series. This is our flush face series. Can you think of any reason that we would want to have a flush face design? Quick hint. Easy to clean. So before you connect it up, you know, hydraulic systems are very, they're based upon, their cost is in direct relationship to their efficiency. So the more efficient it is, the more expensive it is. And stuff like dirt is a contaminant, lowers the efficiency considerably. So if you spend all the money to get this ridiculously efficient pump, and then you shove dirt into the system, you might as well have bought the cheap pump in the first place. So this allows it for its easy, quick wipe, just to keep it clean, but also, probably even more importantly, it has no pocket for stuff to collect in. So it's a dry disconnect, so to speak. If you have two flattened surfaces, flush faces, as the name implies, so when you disconnect it doesn't spill much. So if you're working up in a bucket truck if you're doing tree work for the power company or something like that, and you're using, you know, maybe a hydraulic saw and a hydraulic something else, and you're connecting and disconnecting back and forth. If every time you disconnected you spill an ounce or two in the bottom of your bucket, by the end of the day, you're going to be sliding all over the place. So this would be an application where the flat face or flush face would be much more favorable. There's a locking feature on this, so if you turn the sleeve a little bit, it can't become disconnected. So it has to be in line with the little indentation. And then of course we have our door system on that as well. So you can see that the back end of that that center shaft or the valve that's in here is wider on the end, so the balls don't allow it to shoot through it. What's sometimes a common failure for some of these style fittings made by other companies besides us is that when they fail, that little pin shoots out like a missile across the room when you disconnect it. And just by the same concept of putting the square peg through a round hole, ours won't allow it to shoot out like that. Those balls keep it retained in there. So, and we've designed 1 million impulse cycles, connected or disconnected, so it's been tested quite a bit. So
That one has a lot of I'm like waiting for it to come back this way.
Are you scared they aiming it right at you? I'm not touching it.
That's the only reason he told her.
the HTE nipple is coming soon. It's supposed to be out, I believe, in some of the sizes next month. The idea behind it is that it's an equalizer. So the nipple the design of the nipple will eliminate pressure. If you're talking, remember again with like the Bobcats or whatever, you know, you've got your wire wheel for cleaning the pavement or whatever. You disconnect it, it sits out in the yard until the next job that we need it, which might be 3 weeks from now or whatever. This hot sun's beating down on it and generates static pressure. Just builds pressure just from the oil heating up. Most of the time guys will grab the end of it with a hammer and a screwdriver and tap the end just to bleed the pressure off, which, as you can imagine, damages the face of the coupling, and then depending on how bad it damages it, can damage the seals inside of the coupler. So we are introducing the equalizer, which is a specially designed nipple that allows you to connect it without beating on the end of the fitting. And I'm not really sure how it works. It's all magic, I guess, but it works. So that should be out next week. So some instances where you might find the hydraulic or the flush face, whether it's the HT or the HTE series. You know, we talked about some construction attachments, of course, agricultural, oil field, and hydraulic tools. On a mini excavator, so you've got here they're using a hydraulic chisel. There's the connection on the side, there's a blow up, so that's got a HT connection right there. On a skid steer, here's where all your connections are on the side of the machine. So when they disconnect this and put the blade or the bucket or whatever, they unplug all of these lines and plug in the new ones. So that would be right on the side there. You can see the blow up there. Another new product for us is the VEP. This is the key to this is high impulse, high pressure, high impulse. It screws together. It'll connect with pressure in the line. It may need a wrench depending on how much pressure is in there, but you can, if it's not much, you can overcome it. It's got a dust seal to let you know when it's connected all the way. The blue O-ring is covered up. And that has the door system as well. High impulse, high pressure construction equipment, oil rigs, BOP, or any application needing the ability to connect and disconnect under pressure. So BOP is blow off preventer. So like on the spill down in the Gulf, the BP spill, that's what failed. The BOP valve or something it failed, and that's what caused the thing to continue to spew for endless days. So the idea behind BOP is that it sends a valve, a door basically across it, blows off if something goes wrong, and it slams a cap over the end of the valve and keeps it from spewing oil all over. In the Dixon quick coupling catalog, we have actually started to color code these, powder code them red, so anything that's BOP approved comes with a nice, easily identifiable red powder coated end to it. So, some applications where you may find the VEP would be, again, excavator attachments like the hydraulic hammers, front end loader, vibratory hammers. In my father-in-law's marina, they're replacing a lot of the bulkheads, so they've got an excavator with those little hammer on the end, and it's just driving down the pilings, and that's all done hydraulically. So that would be an application for them to use that. And we talked about out in the oil field for their power units, pipe spinners, wire lines, hydraulic hoists, and then the blow-off preventers. On a crawler crane, two applications where you might find VEP. One here, where they're connecting the attachment, and then down here, which is actually turning the tracks. So, a couple of spots where VEP might come in handy. Vibratory hammer, as I was just talking about, pile driver, same thing, they've got this, sits right on top. Same thing with putting the little guardrails down, you know, as they're building anything that they're driving into the ground. Skid steer, we talked about, I used the word bobcat, I meant generic skid steer. There's no affiliation between me and bobcat. Just rolls off the tongue so much easier. So, but again, on the side of the machine here where they connect and disconnect the attachments, you see the blow up, so they might have some of the smaller VEPs there. Okay, so real quick, the DQC 714 is still our current catalog. We should be coming out with a new Dixon catalog and DQC catalog for the beginning of the year. They're designed to look very similar. On the inside cover, it shows you all the different products that we offer. So there's a lot of different, for cold molding injection and the different series of pneumatic and additional hydraulic ones. But the ones, again, to concentrate on are the Fabulous 5 that are on this sheet, because they are 80% of this catalog sales. On the opposite page is a checklist of all the different features and options that are available. In the top right corner, if you want to make a note of it, in the main multiplier box there, you guys have a 0.26, which is different than your Dixon big catalog book. You have a 0.26 multiplier. There's a couple of informative pages as far as like technical information and things. The stamped, size, temperature, application, media, pressures, ends, and details, or Dixon, and how to couple things, sizing charts, glossary of quick coupling terms, so you can make sure you're talking the same language, how to install, and then if you go to like page 12, for instance, 12 and 13, at the beginning of each style of fitting, there's all the information, this technical information that you'll find as far as what it looks like, a profile chart on it, what its working pressure is, burst pressure, any options, seals, all of that kind of stuff, flow rates, materials available, etc. So for that series, in this case the DF series, you've got all your options right there and the interchangeability. You go to the next couple of pages back, there you can see an illustration of that demo I did at the beginning without, this one has a hose on it though, on page 21. How you hold it to disconnect it so you're safely maintaining that hose. DQC catalog and sales tool, if I can do this, I'm going to try. Is anybody outside sales?
Around.
Yes, okay. So you have a iPhone or a Droid or a flip phone? Yeah,
Droid.
Droid, okay.
He's
Well-
not a techno lead.
Yeah, on me either. So if this comes off, I'll be amazed. Okay. Wait for it. Continue to wait for it. So, there we go.
Hey,
Okay, so we have our, there's a couple of different apps that are available in the App Store for Droid and Android and for iPhones. But what we're concerned with is the DQC Global Interchange. So it'll ask you for a competitor part number and a competitor name if you know it. Just to show you that we're unbiased, I'm going to put in DC20, which is conveniently one of these for Dixon. So anything that it knows that has a DC20 in it will come up. Now this is the one I was referring to. Dixon's part number is a DC20. Dixon quick coupling part number is a 2FF2-B. Competitor name is Dixon, and it's a 1/4 inch industrial coupler by 1/4 inch NPT female in brass. I'm not really sure that's it. Let's touch on that. Let's touch on that. And as it whirls and twirls, it pulls up that specifically, gives you, down here, the picture of it, a little more of the information, body sizes, some product details, construction, then again how it works. So it'll even walk you through it so you don't have to drive an hour and a half the wrong way to show somebody how to do it. And then any of the related products that go along with it. So kind of a handy tool to have if you're out on the road. A guy hands you, hey, can you get me this? You can go, boop, boop, boop. Yep, sure can. And if you know that the competitor's name, for instance in this, we know that that's a Dixon part number. So by typing in Dixon, and yeah, it eliminates all those other ones, so it narrows down the field. So if you know whose it is, it'll do it make it a lot easier to find. So very handy tool to have, especially when you're out in the field. So I would encourage you downloading. Okay. If this transition works smoothly, that brings us to
To the boat ride.
brings us
sounds
to,
like a great idea to me.
I'd much rather be here, believe me.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, well, I don't know what happened there, but why is this not showing? Current slide. Bear with me, sorry. I'm not tech savvy either. This is just more of a review in case you forgot anything we've already discussed. I'm flipping through it quickly. Well, we'll get there eventually. So basically, some of the things, the last slide was just reminding you that A, we're a domestic manufacturer. We're down in Charlotte, North Carolina. We have we just about a year and a half ago moved into a 100,000 square foot facility, and it's all air conditioned, which is kind of nice. The shop folks really like it a lot. But we've already outgrown it, so we're in the process of adding another 80,000 square feet to that facility. Yeah, it's pretty sizable. And even though we manufacture in Charlotte, we stock all this stuff in the Dixon warehouses. So there's 12 warehouses across the country that have this stuff, even though it's only manufactured outside of Charlotte and Dallas. You can add this stuff to your Dixon order to count for the free freight. You know, a free freight policy is $1,000. So you can combine Dixon parts with DQC parts to get to that $1,000, which is handy. And this stuff is everywhere. You know, I mean, I know one of probably the biggest obstacles for you guys to overcome is people think of you for pipe, and then they'll think about the next step. One of the beauties of being a Dixon distributor is, you know, we try to we keep going steps. So the more you have to offer, the more you get invited back to dinner. Is kind of the way I look at it. And so, you know, if you just ask to say, hey, if you know you're getting an air pipe going into an air system, you say you need an FRL for that, because it's usually an FRL that's, you know, pipe on one side and hose on the other. You guys aren't so much into the hose end of things, but on the FRL unit, you know, it's piped on the other side. So there's another $300 to add to the sale. If you're selling an air hose, you know, that's a $30 sale, and you can add a $300 FRL unit to it, why wouldn't you, right? Same thing with this. We're getting so close. I'm just determined at this point now. So it's just the last slide to show you, and it doesn't say anything other than our logo, but I'm going to get there, because I will win, I think. I say that as it shuts down on me now. So are there any questions? Does any of this make any sense whatsoever?
Not a bit.
Perfect. Thoroughly confused you. Great. You know, 90% of our products are made in this brand new state-of-the-art facility. All right, I lose. You win. Okay, there we go. You know, we can design on demand. So we're in the manufacturing world. So if there's something that comes up and we don't have an interchange for it or something like that, we're certainly willing to look at trying to manufacture it for us. We've got one of those, you know, 3D printers and stuff like that, so we can get a prototype to you pretty quickly. Getting the actual product might take a lot longer, but at least we can get working in that direction. And just like all the Dixon stuff, you know, 98% of the orders are shipped the same day as they are ordered. So it's the broadest offering in the industry, and we have combined global presence with intimate knowledge of markets that we serve. So there you have it.
Is the information that's on that app also available on the regular website?
Yes, pretty sure. I think so. I'm going to say yes. I'm a salesman, so I'm allowed to lie. But I think it is. It should be, yes. Any other questions?
Oh, God, there's some questions. Larry, which question?
Can't think of any. I'm just thinking about where to sell it now.
Any place that they're using airlines or hydraulic lines, they got to connect it and disconnect it at some point. So, you guys, I think.
Can't use quick disconnect with gas.
With what kind of gas?
Like,
Propane?
yeah,
You can.
exactly. You can't anymore, can you?
I don't know. I used to have one of those Weber grills that had it. Is that what you're thinking about? Yeah, me too. And they kind of took that away. But you can use it in the bigger sizes, like
Okay.
for, like, obviously gas is a little bit of a topic these days now with propane and LP gas, natural gas and all that, so they're coming back to that.
Now that I bought a new grill.
Me too. But,
Me too.
Did ya?
yeah, I forget, that was been maybe 8 or 10 years ago or something, they
Wasn't that
squashed it.
long. Well, you could still use it
Yeah. Yeah,
until the tanks became
right.
out of date.
Yeah, but I think they made that transit, or they kind of started, they stopped making it quick disconnect, like it was a while.
Even the new tanks now, I think it's 12 years, they won't fill them anymore. They have date codes on them.
Right.
You look on your tank, it has that. I used to
Oh,
work-
yeah, I know the
When I used to get mine
date
filled,
code.
I know
Yeah,
they-
that's
I
one.
used to fill them, I was supposed to look at that, I never did, but
Right. Yeah, my guys had an adapter, so they filled my tank way
Yeah.
longer than they were supposed to.
well,
But
I worked there and
eventually,
I just filled mine until,
yeah, eventually. it
for a
got-
while.
So, all right, well, there's no further questions. Oh, wow, how did I forget about this?
See?
I'm sorry.
It's behind
Man,
your,
it,
She was trying to put
behind
that-
your Cape Cod there, or whatever it is you're having.
my punch.
So this will be the last thing, I promise. This is what we call a safety check valve, or air fuse, or an OSHA valve. If you can grab the catalog and turn to page 58 and 59 actually. So the idea
Somebody help
behind
me.
this monstrosity chunk of brass is that
You guys are wrong.
you know, we were talking a little briefly about air hoses flying all over the place. If an air hose breaks, then it has a tendency to whip all over because air is compressible. So you don't want an air hose flying all around. The idea behind this thing is that it's an air fuse or an OSHA valve, or technically called a safety check valve. And you can see it has an arrow on the side of it, and a spring-loaded valve inside here. So as you're using your air tool, everything's going fine. This thing's floating along and there's no worries. All of a sudden, something happens, the hose gets cut, breaks, the fitting comes out of the end of it, whatever. It's unrestricted. Well, just like when you're at the toll booth in line and they open up a new lane, everybody tries to jump into that lane, or at the grocery store to the new cashier that opened. Same thing with air. If there's no restriction, no line, everything tries to evacuate out of that. So this all of a sudden sees a sudden rush in air, and it slams the valve shut, so that you can literally walk up to it and pick it up. It hisses a little bit because there's a real small hole through here that allows air to get through, but not enough to cause the hose to fly all over the place. You could theoretically pick it up, repair it without ever turning the compressor off, and then once that air got back to equal pressure from it seeping through that little hole, the valve would then reopen, reset itself, and you're back in business. So it kind of floats along like that. The downside to this valve is that it has to be sized accordingly. So if you look on, let's just look at the 3/4 inch. There's 6 different sizes available in a 3/4 inch valve there. See them? So if you come over a couple of columns to the SCFM rating, the very first one is rated 72 to 88. What that means is it'll never cut off below 72. It'll always cut off when it gets to 88 CFM, not PSI, CFM. So an air hammer, a jackhammer, might require 100 CFM to hammer effectively. If you use this first valve, every time you pull the trigger, the air tool would say, hey, give me 100 CFM from the compressor. It would try to suck 100 CFM, and that valve would trip, slam shut. And it would get a nuisance check, is what they appropriately call it. So you'd have to go, if you went to the next size up, that's rated 92 to 108. So if I grab 100 CFM, it might check, it might not. In between, because it's just spring loaded, is a gray area. So it'll never shut off at 92, it'll always shut off at 108. It might shut off at 100, it might shut off at 93, but it'll never shut off at 92, and it'll always shut off at 108. So we want to go one more size up. for our 100 CFM, because it'll never shut off below 112. We need 100, so that's where we want to start. Make sense? And it's definitely going to shut off by 128 when it gets there. It might shut off at 113, but it's always going to shut off. The only stipulation to this is that it has to know when it has to be able to sense that there's a rush in air. So you have to have a buffer between the maximum the compressor can put out, a 10% buffer, maximum the compressor can put out, and what the valve is. So if you were using a 200 CFM compressor, for instance, you couldn't use the very largest one, because 200 is where it's going to cut off. So you'd have to go down to one size to the 160, 180, so that you'd have that 20 CFM, so it could say, hey, something's gone wrong, close. So it's easiest to just try and pick one that's in the middle. You know, you got 300 CFM, 375 CFM compressor and 100 tool. Try and get one that's in that 200 range, and you should be good most of the time. So any place that is using a portable compressor, OSHA wants to see one of these. A lot of people use the whip checks, the little cables, safety cables, but that only gives you this much coverage. So if something happens and the hose breaks over here, now you've just got more metal flying through the air. This thing will cover 100 feet or more of hose. It goes right at the source, it would go right on the compressor, and then that whole line going down, or the manifold, everything coming off of it would be covered. We say every 100 feet you should put another one. So it gives you a lot better coverage. But if you think about it, a portable compressor, if you have a hose break and you're working on, you know, the streets downtown Manhattan at lunchtime, you're going to rack up a whole bunch of lawsuits in a hurry, right? So that's why they want you to have some sort of device on there. But even in plant facilities, you know, often the hose line will be, or the air main runs down, you know, the ceiling, and you've got drops for you and a drop for you and a drop for me. And if the drops usually, you know, are up, they have a valve up there, and then it's hose coming down to whatever we're going to hook up to. Well, if Bubba comes whipping around the bend after having some punch at lunch and catches your hose and tears it down, well, now that hose is flying all over the place, and somebody's got to be brave enough to go in there with a broom handle or something and try and turn that valve on while the hose is flying all around, smacking them in the face. Not exactly the safest scenario. So if you had one of these check valves in there, it would stop that. The valve would slam shut, and you could walk right up to it and turn it off. Your other option is, of course, standing back and letting that thing fly until the entire line drains down through that, and then everybody's shut down. So if you wouldn't want to use them necessarily on every single drop throughout the facility, but if it's a high traffic area where it could get disrupted by the stray forklift or something like that, that'd be a nice little problem solver for them. So, questions?
Main competitor
For
these products, all these.
everybody. I mean, Parker, Hanson, Snap Tight, there's a lot of guys that are out there that compete against us on that. But nobody really offers the full line that we do, as far as pneumatic and hydraulic. Like Amflow makes a lot of stuff, and they're down and dirty pricing, but they don't make anything hydraulic. And Snap Tight, you know, makes mostly hydraulic. I don't know how much pneumatics they do. So we kind of have the best offering as far as covering all your bases. And then the fact that you can throw it on a Dixon order and it comes in the next day, you know, doesn't make it too challenging either. Any other questions? All right, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Quite welcome. If somebody could turn that damn camera off. Oh, no.
Should I do it?
That'd be great.
Yeah, cool, thank you.